My parents prepared a birthday party. As soon as I walked in, everyone laughed. My aunt snickered, "That dress looks like it came from a dumpster." My cousin yelled, "Hey everyone, it's the family embarrassment." I clutched my purse and whispered, "Stay strong, just smile." What happened next left them speechless. Long story short, I was invited to a birthday party that my parents threw for me. I expected it to be a nice family get-together, but as soon as I walked in, everything took a turn. My aunt made a snide comment about my dress, and my cousin called me the family embarrassment. I was hurt, humiliated, but I managed to keep my cool and forced a smile. What happened next? Let's just say, it left them all speechless. I'm not sure what to do now, but I wanted to share this and get some advice on how to handle this kind of family situation. I feel like I need to stand my ground, but I don't know if that will make things worse. I pulled into the driveway with a sigh, gripping the steering wheel tighter than I probably should have. The weather outside was crisp, early spring bringing a faint warmth that I could feel through my worn-out jacket. But it didn't help ease the unease swirling inside me. My parents had invited me to what they promised would be a simple family birthday party, nothing extravagant, just an afternoon with relatives to celebrate my 32nd birthday. For anyone who doesn't know, things have been strained between me and my family. I'm the black sheep, the one who left the perfect life behind, got divorced, and made choices that weren't what they expected from me. And my parents? Well, they've never quite forgiven me for it. The last time I really felt their support was years ago. Back when everything seemed like it was falling into place, before my marriage unraveled and my life changed in ways I never saw coming. I was married to Carl for 8 years. We had known each other since high school, and everyone thought we were the picture of a perfect couple. But what they didn't know was that after a few years of trying and failing to make things work, I realized it just wasn't right anymore. The relationship had become toxic, and it wasn't doing either of us any good. The problem was, my family didn't see it that way. When I told them I was leaving Carl, it felt like I'd shattered their image of me. Divorce was something they didn't understand. It was failure in their eyes. So, here I was, standing in front of my parents' house, feeling like a failure all over again, even though I knew deep down it wasn't true. I had to do this. It was my birthday, and they'd gone through all the trouble of putting together this party. It felt like a weird attempt to smooth things over, but I had to try to be civil, right? I walked to the front door and paused before opening it. I could hear the chatter and laughter from inside. The kind of warm sound you hear at family gatherings when everyone's comfortable and happy. But as I stepped in, I immediately felt the shift. The laughter faltered, the atmosphere changed, and I realized that nothing had actually changed between me and them. It wasn't the friendly welcome I'd hoped for. It was cold, uncomfortable, and a little too forced. My Aunt Marissa was the first to speak. She was standing by the dining table, a glass of wine in hand, and as soon as I entered, I could see the disdain in her eyes. She looked me up and down, as if trying to find something to criticize. "That dress looks like it came from a dumpster," she muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, her voice dripping with mockery. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. The dress I was wearing wasn't glamorous. It was just a simple, second-hand black dress I'd found at a thrift store. It was all I could afford, but I thought it looked decent enough. I couldn't afford designer labels or anything fancy, but I thought this would be okay for a family gathering. I forced myself to keep walking, taking slow, deliberate steps toward the table. I could feel my face heating up, but I didn't let it show. I had learned a long time ago that showing weakness only gave them more to latch onto. But then, as I reached the table, my cousin Ricky, who had always been the loud, brash one, called out, "Hey everyone, look, it's the family embarrassment." His voice rang out across the room, drawing even more attention to me. I stood there, trying to hold back tears. My palms were sweaty, my legs were shaking. They were all staring at me. My parents stood off to the side, silent, not offering any comfort or defense. No one spoke up, not even to tell Ricky to shut up. I clenched my purse tighter and whispered to myself, "Stay strong. Just smile." It was all I could do at that moment, force a smile and act like everything was fine. "Mom, Dad, I'm glad you could all make it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite how much it wavered. My eyes darted around the room, looking for anyone who would at least acknowledge the discomfort in the air. But no one did. "Of course, honey," my mom replied, but her voice had that edge to it, the kind that suggested she didn't really want me here. She smiled, too brightly, but I could see the faint flicker of disapproval in her eyes. She gestured to the cake. "We've got your favorite flavor, remember? Chocolate and vanilla." I nodded but couldn't bring myself to say anything else. I felt like I was suffocating. This was supposed to be my day, my moment to feel loved, but it felt like I was just another joke to them. For the next hour or so, I sat there, trying to be as invisible as possible. I pretended to engage in conversation, nodded at the right times, and forced myself to take bites of cake even though I had no appetite. The whole time, Aunt Marissa kept throwing little digs my way, making sly remarks about my life choices, my appearance, anything she could find. "Still not married, huh?" she said at one point, her voice oozing sarcasm. "Guess that divorce really did a number on you." I felt the lump in my throat grow bigger, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't going to let her get to me. Not today. But Ricky wasn't done. As the evening wore on, he kept up his taunts, calling me out for being out of touch and for not having my life together. It didn't matter how much I tried to ignore him, his voice kept echoing in my head, and I could feel the weight of everyone's judgment bearing down on me. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was suffocating, like I was about to explode if I didn't do something. I stood up from my chair, my hands gripping the back of it so tightly I thought the wood might snap. "Enough," I said, my voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with each word. "I'm done with this. I'm not your punching bag, and I'm not going to sit here and let you all make me feel like crap anymore. I didn't come here for this. I didn't come here to be ridiculed by people I'm supposed to be close to." The room went silent. I could feel the weight of their stares, the shock written on their faces. For a moment, no one moved. Then my mom opened her mouth, but I stopped her before she could say anything. "No," I said, taking a deep breath. "I've had enough. I've spent my whole life trying to live up to what you wanted me to be, but I'm done. I'm not who you want me to be. I'm me. And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's time for us to have a different kind of conversation." I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked toward the door, my heart racing, my hands trembling. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I finally let out the breath I had been holding. My chest felt tight, but there was also a sense of relief. Finally, after all these years, I had stood up for myself. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if things would ever go back to normal with my family. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my own life. And that was worth more than anything they could say. The drive home was a blur of emotions, my hands still gripping the steering wheel tightly. I couldn't stop shaking, but I wasn't sure if it was from the adrenaline or the raw anger still coursing through me. I had expected it to hurt, but nothing could have prepared me for the gut punch of rejection from my family. What stung the most wasn't the comments themselves, though they were cutting and uncalled for. It was the silence that followed. The way my parents stood by, the way they allowed my aunt and cousin to rip into me without so much as a word of defense. For a long time, I had looked for validation from them. I thought that if I just proved myself to be the person they wanted, I could finally earn their approval. But tonight, I had realized something: that approval would never come. I pulled into my apartment complex, the same tired place I'd been living in for years. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I walked up to my door, fumbling with my keys, the weight of the evening settling in with every step. When I finally made it inside, I collapsed onto my couch. I didn't know how to feel: angry, sad, confused, relieved? Maybe all of it at once. As I sat there in the quiet of my apartment, I began to replay the events of the night in my head. I had done something tonight that I hadn't done in years. I had stood up for myself. And yet, I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that it wasn't enough. Did they even care? Was my outburst just a temporary release, or had it actually made a difference? I scrolled through my phone absent-mindedly, trying to distract myself, but I kept coming back to the unanswered texts from my mom. She had sent me 2 messages after I left the party. The first was a simple, "I can't believe you left. Why didn't you talk to me first?" The second was just, "We need to fix this." I stared at the screen, unsure of how to respond. The truth was, I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to walk back into that house and pretend like everything was fine, like nothing had happened. But at the same time, I couldn't help but wonder if I was being too harsh. Was I overreacting? Was there a way to salvage any kind of relationship with them, or was that chapter of my life over? The next few days felt like a limbo. My phone was filled with messages, but I couldn't bring myself to read them all. The guilt crept in slowly, at first like a faint whisper, and then like a wave crashing over me. I had been the one to storm out. I had been the one to lash out. Maybe I could have handled things differently. Maybe I should have tried to explain myself calmly, rather than just walking away. But then I would remember the way they looked at me, my mom's disappointed gaze, my aunt's sneer, Ricky's mocking tone. And I knew I had done the right thing. I spent the next few days trying to distract myself from the emotional turmoil. I went for long walks, called old friends I hadn't spoken to in years, and lost myself in books and Netflix shows. But no matter how hard I tried to push the thoughts away, my mind always returned to one question: what now? The phone calls kept coming. I avoided answering. Eventually, my mom left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, but it wasn't angry. Just sad. "Honey, I really think we need to talk. I don't know what happened, but this isn't the way we should be doing things. You're my daughter, and I don't want to lose you. Please, let's just have a conversation." I didn't respond right away. I sat in silence, the phone in my hand, trying to decide what I wanted. What did I want from them? What did I want from myself? It was clear that my family wasn't going to change overnight. They would still see me as the disappointment, the failure. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living for them. It had taken me too long to realize that I was allowed to make my own choices, that I didn't need their approval to define my worth. But as much as I wanted to believe that, the reality of not having them in my life at all was daunting. Was it really possible to rebuild something after everything that had happened? Could we even have a relationship if they still couldn't accept me for who I was? I wasn't sure what I wanted, but I knew I had to face them. A week passed before I finally called my mom back. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I knew I couldn't keep avoiding her forever. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Her voice was hesitant when she spoke. "Honey, you called?" I could tell she was trying to hide the nervousness in her voice. I wasn't sure how to start, but I knew I couldn't go in with anger. That wasn't the way to fix this. "Yeah, Mom." My voice cracked slightly, and I cleared my throat, trying to regain some control. "I think we need to talk." There was a long pause, and I could hear her taking a slow breath on the other end of the line. "I agree. I I don't understand what happened, sweetheart. I thought we were past all of this. We've tried, haven't we?" I didn't want to go down the path of rehashing every painful moment. I didn't want to accuse her of anything, but I couldn't ignore the hurt I felt either. "Mom," I said, my voice softening, "it's not about you. It's about how I feel. I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. You know, after the divorce, after everything, I thought things would change. But they didn't. You and Dad, Aunt Marissa, Ricky, you all made me feel like I wasn't good enough. And it hurt more than I can say." I could hear her breathing deeply on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry you felt that way," she said quietly. "But I don't think you really understand how much we've tried. We just want you to be happy. We want the best for you." I paused, thinking carefully about how to respond. "I know you want what's best for me." But I need you to understand that what makes me happy might not be what you expect. And I'm okay with that. I've spent so many years trying to meet your expectations, trying to be someone I'm not. But I can't do that anymore. I have to live for myself now, not for you or anyone else." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But she didn't. "I hear you," she said after a while, her voice quiet. "But I still don't understand why you feel like we can't be there for you. We're family." It was the same argument we had every time we tried to have a conversation about my life. I knew it wasn't going to be an easy road. But this time I felt stronger. I wasn't going to back down. "I need time," I said finally. "I'm not saying I don't love you, but I need to take a step back. I have to figure things out on my own. And I need you to respect that." The silence on the line stretched out again, but this time, it didn't feel as heavy. "I'll respect that," she said softly. "Just, don't shut us out forever, okay?" "I won't," I replied. "But I need to do this for me." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone feeling both relieved and exhausted. The weight of everything wasn't gone, but for the first time, I felt like I was standing up for myself. For who I was, for what I needed. The following weeks were quiet, quieter than I'd expected. After that phone call with my mom, I didn't hear much from them. At first, I thought it was a relief, the distance giving me space to breathe. But as time passed, I began to wonder if they had just given up on me. The silence was almost too peaceful. It made me wonder whether I had made the right choice by pulling away. Was I really standing up for myself, or was I running from something that could have been salvaged? I didn't know. But deep down, I knew that what had happened at that birthday party wasn't something I could just forget. The hurt, the mockery, the judgment, they weren't things that could just be swept under the rug. I wasn't going to let them get away with treating me like that anymore. I had spent far too long hiding behind polite smiles and pretending to be someone I wasn't just to keep the peace. This time, I was done. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense, the kind that involved shouting or making a grand spectacle. It was about standing my ground, showing them that I wasn't a punching bag they could toss around. It was about taking control of my own narrative for once, instead of letting them control it. I started small. The next family event came up a couple of months later. My cousin's wedding. I knew it would be another gathering where the tension would be palpable, but I felt strangely empowered. I decided that I was going to go, but on my terms. I wouldn't be afraid anymore. I wouldn't shrink back. I spent a good part of the day getting ready. The dress I wore wasn't expensive, but it was something I loved. It was bold and colorful, everything I was told I shouldn't be. I did my hair and makeup the way I liked, not the way anyone would expect me to. When I walked into the venue, I could feel all eyes on me. I wasn't just walking into a wedding, I was walking into a room full of judgmental relatives who had spent years making me feel small. The moment I stepped through the door, Aunt Marissa's eyes locked onto mine. She looked me up and down, her lips twisting into that familiar sneer. Ricky was standing near the bar with a drink in hand, and I could see the beginnings of a smirk on his face. But this time, I didn't flinch. I walked past them confidently, holding my head high. It felt almost surreal. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to take the first shot. I wasn't waiting to feel like I didn't belong. Aunt Marissa was the first to speak. "Nice dress. You sure you can afford it?" Her voice was low, just loud enough for me to hear, but it didn't hit me the way it used to. Instead, I smiled to myself. I walked right up to her, leaned in just slightly so she could hear me clearly, and said in a voice that carried. "It's funny, Marissa, how you always have something to say about how I dress. But I guess you wouldn't understand. Not everyone can afford a shopping spree at the mall. Some of us have to get creative." Her face went pale. The words hung in the air for a second, and I could see the shock on her face. Ricky, who had been about to take a sip of his drink, froze in place. For a brief moment, I saw something shift in the room. But it wasn't just Marissa and Ricky who noticed. The whole room had heard. My parents, standing by the cake table, exchanged a glance, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something resembling recognition in their eyes. I wasn't going to be the person they could just disregard anymore. I wasn't the person who would shrink in their presence. I turned away from Marissa, making my way across the room, but not before I overheard Ricky mutter, "Wow, someone finally grew a spine." I didn't respond. Instead, I made my way to the bar and ordered a drink, feeling the eyes of my relatives on me. The moment was mine. And I knew they didn't expect it. They didn't expect me to fight back, to show that I wasn't as weak as they thought. As the night went on, I stayed in control. I didn't let anyone bait me. I danced, laughed, and talked to family members who actually seemed happy to see me. It was clear to everyone that I was no longer the family embarrassment. I was something else now. Someone they couldn't push around. By the end of the night, as I was getting ready to leave, my mom came up to me. Her face was softer than it had been in months. She looked at me, not with the same disappointment or disapproval, but with something I hadn't seen in years, understanding. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For standing up for yourself. I know I haven't always made it easy for you, but I want you to know I see you. I see the woman you've become." It wasn't the big apology I was expecting, but it was enough. Enough for me to know that my decision to break away, to finally stand my ground, had made a difference. She wasn't perfect, and our relationship was far from fixed, but this was a start. I smiled, more genuinely than I had in a long time. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it." As I walked out of the venue, I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted. I had faced them, not with anger, but with confidence. I had shown them that I wasn't going to be their punching bag anymore. And somehow, that felt like the sweetest revenge. I knew it wouldn't fix everything, and I wasn't naive enough to think that suddenly everything was going to be fine between us. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells. I wasn't worried about being the family disappointment anymore. I had done something they didn't expect. And it left them speechless.